The ambient hum of Terminal 3 at JFK International Airport was a familiar soundtrack to David Miller, but today, it felt heavier. In his left hand, he held a scuffed leather briefcase. With his right, he tightly clasped the small, warm hand of his 7-year-old daughter, Maya. Maya was wearing her favorite outfit, a denim jacket adorned with colorful iron-on patches of space shuttles and planets, and a pair of bright pink light-up sneakers. In her free arm, she hugged Barnaby, a profoundly worn plush bear missing one eye. For David, a 36-year-old structural engineer, this flight wasn't just a trip. It was a defining threshold. Exactly 14 months ago, his wife Sarah had passed away after a brutal battle with leukemia. Since then, it had been just him and Maya, navigating the quiet, echoing spaces of their suburban home. This trip to London was meant to be a fresh chapter, a summer vacation to visit Sarah's parents, who hadn't seen Maya since the funeral, to make the journey special and, frankly, to survive a red-eye flight with a grieving child who still suffered from night terrors. David had done something entirely out of character. He had cashed in years of accumulated frequent flyer miles and emptied a significant portion of his savings to purchase 2 first-class tickets on Apex Airways Flight 42. He wanted Maya to have space, to be able to lie down and to feel safe. "Daddy, look." Maya pointed toward the massive glass windows overlooking the tarmac, where a Boeing 777-300ER sat basking in the golden late-afternoon sun. "Is that our rocket ship?" David smiled, a genuine one that reached his eyes for the first time in weeks. "That's it, Bug. And tonight you get a seat that turns into an actual bed. Can Barnaby have his own pillow?" "Absolutely. Barnaby gets first-class treatment too." As the gate agent announced pre-boarding for first-class passengers, David felt a rare sense of ease. He guided Maya down the jetway, the air transitioning from the terminal's air-conditioned chill to the metallic, fuel-scented warmth of the aircraft door, the welcome and the disturbance at the door. They were greeted by a senior flight attendant named Evelyn, whose crisp uniform and immaculate posture screamed decades of corporate training. Her smile was practiced and brilliant. "Welcome aboard, boarding passes, please," Evelyn said. David handed them over. Evelyn glanced at the slips of paper, her eyes flickering slightly as she looked from the first-class cabin A, seats 2B and 2D designation, to David's faded corduroy jacket and Maya's light-up shoes. The hesitation was microscopic, but David noticed it. He was used to it. Single dads in casual clothes rarely fit the expected demographic of high-paying premium travelers. "Right this way, through the left aisle," Evelyn said, her tone dipping just a fraction into a more transactional register. Cabin A was a sanctuary of muted grays, brushed gold accents, and deep plush pods. Maya's eyes widened to the size of saucers. "Whoa," she whispered, instantly scrambling into seat 2B. She buckled herself in with practiced ease, placing Barnaby carefully on the wide armrest. David settled into 2D right across the aisle, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over him. For 20 minutes, the cabin filled quietly. Business executives in tailored suits opened laptops. A glamorous couple in matching designer loungewear ordered pre-departure champagne. David watched Maya play with her bear, feeling that maybe, just maybe, the worst of their storm was behind them. Then, the vibe in the cabin shifted. A sharp, demanding voice echoed from the galley. "I don't care what the system says. I booked a window seat in the forward cabin and I expect to sit in it." David looked up. Walking down the aisle was a tall, sharply dressed man in his late 40s, sporting a bespoke navy blazer, a gold Rolex, and an unmistakable aura of absolute entitlement. Behind him was Julian, a younger, visibly stressed male flight attendant holding a tablet. "I understand, Mr. Sterling," Julian said quietly, trying to de-escalate. "But as I mentioned, there was a last-minute aircraft swap. The configuration changed and your specific seat assignment was reallocated. We have an excellent seat for you in premium economy, and our customer service team will issue a full refund of the fare difference plus a voucher." Mr. Sterling stopped dead in his tracks, right next to row 2. He looked down at Maya, then at David, his lip curling in a subtle sneer. "Premium economy," Sterling scoffed, his voice loud enough to make the executive in 1A look up. "Do you know how much money I spend with Apex Airways? I am a Diamond Elite member. I fly 300,000 miles a year. I am not sitting in the back of the bus because your system glitched. Look at this." He gestured aggressively toward Maya. You have a child occupying a premium international business pod. Children shouldn't even be in first class. Fix this." David felt his blood pressure spike, but he kept his voice low and calm.
"Excuse me, sir."
"Please don't talk about my daughter like she's an object. We have paid tickets for these seats." Sterling didn't even look at David. He kept his eyes locked on Julian. "Get the purser, now." The ultimatum within minutes, Evelyn returned, her expression guarded. She spoke in hushed tones with Julian, who handed her the tablet. She scanned the screen, then looked at David and Maya. David felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He recognized that look. It was the look of a corporate employee deciding which party represented the path of least resistance. On one hand, a high-value, loud corporate frequent flyer. On the other, a quiet father and a little girl. Evelyn stepped closer to David, leaning down slightly. "Mr. Miller, I'm afraid we have a bit of an issue. As Julian mentioned, due to the aircraft swap, Cabin A is technically oversold by one seat. Because of Mr. Sterling's elite status and the corporate contract his firm holds with our airline, the system automatically flagged his reservation to take priority." David stared at her, dumbfounded. "I don't care about his corporate contract. I purchased these tickets 3 months ago. They are confirmed. My daughter's 7 years old, it's a night flight, and she needs to be next to me." "We completely understand, Mr. Miller," Evelyn said, though her voice lacked any real empathy. "What we can do is move you and your daughter to economy comfort. You'll have an entire row of 3 seats to yourselves so she can still lie down across them. And of course Apex will issue a substantial travel voucher for the inconvenience." "No," David said, his voice firming up. "No, thank you. We are staying in the seats we paid for." Mr. Sterling let out a loud, dramatic laugh. "This is ridiculous. It's an overnight flight. I have a multi-million-dollar merger meeting in London tomorrow morning at 10. I need rest. This kid is going to sleep through the whole flight anyway. She won't know the difference between first class and a cargo hold. Move them." "Sir, watch your mouth," David snapped, standing up from his seat. He loomed over Sterling, his protective fatherly instincts taking over. "Do not speak to us like that." Maya shrank back into her seat, pulling Barnaby tight against her chest. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetie, we're not in trouble," David said, his voice softening instantly as he looked at her. "Everything is fine," Evelyn intervened, her tone turning ice cold. "Mr. Miller, please remain seated. At this point, we are making an operational directive. We need to clear the aisle so we can push back on time. If you refuse to cooperate with crew instructions, we will have no choice but to involve airport security and have you removed from the aircraft entirely." The threat hung heavily in the air. The rest of the first-class cabin was dead silent. Some passengers looked away uncomfortable. Others watched the drama unfold like a reality TV show. David felt completely trapped. The image of airport police dragging him and his crying daughter off a plane flashed through his mind. It would traumatize Maya for years. She had already lost her mother. She couldn't handle seeing her father treated like a criminal. "Fine," David whispered, the defeat bitter in his mouth. "Fine, we'll move." "Excellent choice," Sterling muttered, already reaching for his leather briefcase to claim the overhead bin. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Miller," Evelyn said, her professional veneer instantly snapping back into place. "Julian will assist you with your bags." As David gathered Maya's small backpack, he looked at his daughter. Tears were silently streaming down her face. She didn't understand why they were being kicked out, why the angry man was taking her seat, or why her dad couldn't stop it. "Come on, Bug," David said softly, taking her hand. "We're going to go find another spot. It's okay." The walk of shame, the walk down the aisle from first class to the back of the aircraft, felt like a mile long. Every passenger they passed stared at them. David kept his head high, but inside, he was burning with a mixture of intense rage and profound humiliation. He had failed to protect his daughter from the callousness of the world, even in a space where he had paid to keep her safe. They reached row 24 in economy comfort. As promised, it was a row of 3 seats, but compared to the private pods of first class, it felt claustrophobic. The air was stuffier, the seats narrower, and the harsh fluorescent lighting overhead offered no comfort. Maya slid into the window seat, curling her legs up and burying her face in her denim jacket, sobbing quietly. David sat next to her, wrapping an arm around her small shoulders. "I'm sorry, Maya," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." "I want Mom," she cried softly, The words cut David like a knife. He tightened his grip on her, staring blankly at the seatback screen in front of him, feeling utterly powerless. Meanwhile, up in the cockpit, the pre-flight routine was nearing completion. In the cockpit, Captain John Jack Garrison was a veteran of the skies. With over 30 years of flying experience, 20 of them with Apex Airways, he was a man who commanded respect without ever having to raise his voice. He had gray hair at his temples, sharp blue eyes, and a reputation among crews as a pilot's pilot, someone who cared deeply about safety, precision, and the well-being of his crew and passengers. Sitting next to him was First Officer Leo Vance, a sharp 30-something pilot who was busy plugging the final performance metrics into the flight management computer, FMC. "Winds out of the east at 12 knots, Jack," Marcus said, tapping the screen. "Taxi route is short tonight. We should be airborne right on schedule." "Good," Jack replied, adjusting his headset. "The weather over the Atlantic looks smooth until we hit the Irish coast. Should be an easy night." The cockpit door chimed, and Julian, the junior flight attendant, walked in carrying a tray with 2 bottles of water. His face was flushed, and he looked visibly upset. "Thanks, Julian," Jack said, taking a bottle. He noticed the young man's expression. "Everything all right back there? You look like you just went 10 rounds with a heavyweight." Julian sighed, glancing back toward the closed door. "Just a really ugly situation in Cabin A, Captain. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth, you know?" Jack turned around in his sheepskin-lined seat, his attention fully captured. "What happened?" Julian explained the entire sequence of events: the aircraft swap, the overbooking, Mr. Sterling's aggressive entitlement, and Evelyn's decision to threaten the single father and his little girl with security to appease a high-tier frequent flyer. The little girl was crying her eyes out. "Captain," Julian said, his voice cracking slightly, "the dad didn't do anything wrong. He had a paid ticket. But because the other guy's a diamond elite who spends 6 figures a year with the airline, Evelyn threw them out to the back of the plane. It was brutal to watch." Jack's expression hardened. The relaxed, genial demeanor vanished, replaced by a cold, steely authority. He looked at the FMC, then at the clock on the instrument panel. "A paid first-class ticket?" Jack asked. "Yes, sir. Confirmed months ago." "And Evelyn threatened them with removal?" "Yes, sir. Said she'd call airport police if they didn't vacate the cabin." Jack stood up, unbuckling his harness. He grabbed his uniform cap from the hook behind him. "Marcus, hold the pre-start checklist," Jack said, his voice dropping an octave. Marcus looked up, surprised. "Are we delaying, Captain?" "We aren't going anywhere yet," Jack said firmly. "I'm going to go take a look at my cabin. The captain's..." Intervention. Jack stepped out of the cockpit and walked down the short galley into Cabin A. The environment was quiet. Now. Mr. Sterling was comfortably ensconced in seat 2B, his noise-canceling headphones already over his ears, sipping a glass of pre-departure champagne. Evelyn was at the galley counter, reviewing the passenger manifest. She looked up and smiled warmly as Jack approached. "Oh, Captain. We're all set up here. Cabin is secure for pushback." Jack didn't smile back. He stood squarely in front of her, his hands clasped behind his back. "Evelyn, I just heard about a seating reallocation in this cabin," Jack said, his tone conversational but laced with an undeniable undercurrent of steel. "Can you run me through it?" Evelyn's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. "Oh yes, just an operational adjustment. We had an overbooking issue due to the aircraft swap. Mr. Sterling, who is one of our top corporate clients, was displaced. To resolve the conflict and ensure our high-value passenger was accommodated, I moved a gentleman and his daughter to economy comfort. They were very cooperative after a brief discussion." "A brief discussion?" Jack repeated. "Julian tells me you threatened to have them removed by security." Evelyn's eyes narrowed slightly, a flash of defensiveness crossing her face. "Captain, I made a judgment call to protect the airline's relationship with a Diamond Elite member and to prevent a significant delay. It's within my purview as purser to handle cabin seating disputes." "It is within your purview to manage minor disputes, Evelyn," Jack said, his voice remaining terrifyingly calm and level. "It is not within your purview to bully a father and a child who hold valid, paid first-class tickets out of their seats, just to satisfy the ego of a frequent flyer, who authorized the upgrade or reinstatement of Mr. Sterling over a confirmed passenger. The automated system flagged..." "I don't fly an automated system, Evelyn. I fly this airplane, Jack interrupted, stepping closer. And as the commander of this aircraft, I am ultimately responsible for the safety, security, and ethical treatment of everyone on board. Where are the father and daughter now? Row 24, Evelyn whispered, her professional confidence completely evaporating under the captain's intense gaze. Jack turned his head and looked down the aisle at Mr. Sterling, who was completely oblivious, typing away on his phone. Get Julian, Jack ordered, and come with me. The long walk back. The passengers in economy comfort were surprised to see the captain walking down the aisle, flanked by the purser and a junior flight attendant. Jack walked with a purposeful stride until he reached row 24. He stopped and looked down. Maya was still curled up, her shoulders occasionally shaking with quiet sobs. David was staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched, his arm still tightly wrapped around his daughter. Jack took off his uniform cap, held it in his hand, and crouched down in the narrow aisle so he was at eye level with David. Mr. Miller? Jack said softly. David looked over, his eyes defensive and weary. Look, if this is about us not being happy, we're sitting here. We aren't making a scene. Just leave us alone. Mr. Miller, I'm Captain Jack Garrison, the pilot said, offering a warm, sincere smile. I'm the commander of this flight. I just became aware of what happened in the forward cabin, and I wanted to come down here personally to apologize to you and your daughter. David blinked, caught completely off guard. The anger in his chest gave way to profound confusion. You're apologizing? Yes, sir. What happened to you today was completely unacceptable, and it does not represent who we are or what I allow on my aircraft, Jack said. He then looked past David to the little girl. Hey there, young lady. What's your name? Maya slowly peeked out from under her denim jacket, her eyes red and puffy. Maya, she whispered. Hi, Maya, that's a beautiful name. And who is your friend there? Jack pointed to the plush bear. This is Barnaby, she said, hugging the bear a little tighter. Well, Barnaby looks like a very brave bear, Jack said gently. But I think Barnaby and the two of you were given some bad information. There was a mistake made up front, and those seats 2B and 2D actually belong to you. I've come down here to escort you back to your proper seats. David shook his head, a wave of apprehension hitting him. Captain, thank you, but the man up there, Mr. Sterling, he was incredibly aggressive. My daughter was terrified. I don't want to go back up there and face another shouting match. Jack stood up to his full height, his face hardening with a resolute expression that radiated absolute authority. Mr. Miller, you won't be facing any shouting matches. I can assure you of that, Jack said. Please gather your bags. Julian, help them with their belongings. The standoff, the journey back up the aisle was entirely different. The passengers who had watched David and Maya walk back in shame now watched in hushed awe as the captain himself escorted them toward the front. When they arrived back in cabin A, Mr. Sterling looked up from his phone. Seeing David and Maya return, his face instantly flushed with anger. He pulled off his headphones and stood up. What is the meaning of this? Sterling demanded, looking at Evelyn, then at Jack. I thought we settled this. I am in this seat. Jack stepped between Sterling and the Miller family, shielding Maya from the man's view. Mr. Sterling, you're in a seat that does not belong to you, Jack said, his voice ringing clearly through the quiet cabin. These seats belong to Mr. Miller and his daughter. You were moved to premium economy due to an operational overbooking, and that is where you need to go. Are you insane? Sterling yelled, his voice cracking with rage. Do you know who I am? I am a Diamond Elite member. I fly hundreds of thousands of miles with this airline. I demand you get your supervisor on the phone right now. Mr. Sterling, on this aircraft I am the final authority, Jack replied, his voice calm, steady, and utterly immovable. There is no supervisor higher than me once the cabin doors are closed. You have a choice to make. You can take your assigned seat in premium economy, or you can be removed from this aircraft. I am not moving, Sterling roared, stepping closer to Jack. I paid for a premium experience and I am going to get it. If you try to move me, I will ensure you are fired by the time we land in London. My company handles the corporate travel account for half the executives in your network. Jack didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He simply turned to Evelyn. Evelyn, call the gate agent. Tell them to bring the jet bridge back to the aircraft. And contact JFK Airport Police. We have a passenger refusing crew instructions and exhibiting disruptive behavior. The entire cabin gasped. Mr. Sterling's face went from bright red to a ghostly pale shock. He looked around the cabin, suddenly realizing that his wealth, his status, and his corporate power meant absolutely nothing against the absolute authority of the ship's captain. You're kicking me off?" Sterling stammered, his bravado crumbling. "I am," Jack said. "I do not tolerate the harassment of families, and I do not tolerate passengers who threaten my crew or create a hostile environment before we even leave the ground. You're off this flight, Mr. Sterling. Gather your things." For a long, agonizing moment, Sterling stood there, looking like a man who had suddenly realized the ground beneath him had vanished, realizing the captain was entirely serious, and seeing Julian already picking up the interphone to call the gate. Sterling grabbed his briefcase and his designer jacket. With what little dignity he had left, he marched down the aisle toward the exit, muttering curses under his breath. The cabin was dead silent until the heavy metallic thud of the aircraft door opening and closing echoed through the galley. The true first-class experience. Jack turned back to David and Maya. The hard, commanding edge in his eyes completely vanished, replaced once again by the warm, grandfatherly kindness. "Now then," Jack said, gesturing to seats 2B and 2D, which Julian had already meticulously wiped down and reset. "Mr. Miller, Maya, please take your rightful seats." David looked at Jack, his throat tight with an emotion he could barely contain. For 14 months, he had felt like he was fighting the world alone to keep his daughter safe and happy. To have someone, a complete stranger, stand up for them so fiercely was overwhelming. "Thank you, Captain," David said, his voice thick. "You have no idea what this means to us. It's my pleasure. Mr. Miller, enjoy your flight to London," Jack said with a nod. Before he walked away, Jack knelt down one more time next to Maya, who was now happily settling into her wide pod, buckling Barnaby into the seatbelt next to her. "Maya," Jack whispered, pulling a small, shiny metal object from his breast pocket. It was a pair of official Apex Airways pilot wings. He pinned them gently to the front of her denim jacket, right next to her space shuttle patch. "You are now an honorary co-pilot of Flight 42. If Barnaby gives you any trouble, you let me know, okay?" Maya beamed, a brilliant, radiant smile that completely erased the tears from earlier. "Okay, Captain. Thank you." Jack stood up, adjusted his cap, and walked back up to the cockpit. 10 minutes later, the heavy engines of the Boeing 777 roared to life, and the aircraft began its gentle pushback into the evening twilight. Up in the air, miles above the Atlantic, Maya fell fast asleep, stretched out fully on her flatbed seat, her little hand resting on her new pilot wings, while David watched over her, finally at peace.